now we're gonna go.
Da, da, da.
Yeah, do right now. Okay, so I don't know. You're just seeing Todd in content. I have issues, many personal, technical, all sorts of problems. That's Todd Kidda.
Yeah, and you're Doug Splinter, the voice behind the curtain.
I am. I'll just shift over so they can see me with my digital backdrop and everything else. Hopefully,
I was going to ask you, is it already cold up there?
It's freezing.
What? Literally?
It's not really freezing, but it's like 40 degrees, and that does get me to bring out my Microsoft Technology Center wrong side flannel. So
that's nice. I haven't seen that.
Even though I guess one announcement I should make is I'm not actually in the Microsoft Technology Center organization anymore. I moved into one of our worldwide cross solution strategy groups, so I do. But we're still going to do this because I love it and we love it. And
yeah,
so
I was excited when I reached out to Doug and I'm like, hey, can I assume? I mean, are you moving on? And he's like, no, dude, we're gonna keep doing this. So I'm like, all right, this is good.
I've had many jobs, IT director, all sorts of different things over the years where I did management, and I think everyone keeps saying you're not going to be able to be technical in your new role. And
sounds like a challenge to me.
Well, that's a choice, is my opinion, right? Is to remaining technical, and I love it. So we'll keep doing it as long as people keep watching and give us positive feedback. We'll be moving back to YouTube next week. So sorry for Teams redirection, because I know that lowers our viewership. But hey, we're here, you're here, and Mr. Kidda, you are up first. I'm going to put you back on stage as the camera and the content. And
wonderful.
What do you got for us in this week before Microsoft Ignite?
Well, Doug, I'm going to tell you, first I got some Power BI Paginated reports updates, and there's some really cool stuff for Paginated this week that we'll go through here. So a couple things. We now are supporting multi-factor authentication to Azure SQL Database and Azure Synapse. So those are two obviously very popular, especially SQL DB is super popular, and Synapse is going to be, I think, on the upswing there too. So being able to support multi-factor there is wonderful. Also supporting the common data service support for Paginated reports. And this one I know is, if you haven't hit it, you're probably like, who cares? But if you've hit this one, this has been a pain in the butt. So being able to handle more values if you're doing multi-value parameter support using DAX. So pretty specific scenario. But if that was hurting you before, then that was a pretty big pain in the butt. So that should be resolved for you. And then also just some UX experience around improving the parameter dropdown. So as far as like the length or the width of the parameter dropdown, I'm going to skip to this one because this one is really cool. Bringing two of probably my favorite things that Microsoft makes together: Power Automate, Power BI. Previously, really the only thing that the Power Automate actions did were largely around responding to data alerts. But we've added in preview Power Automate actions that export your Power BI content. So whether that's a native Power BI report or a Paginated report, and I think that will be probably the most popular scenario, is my guess, being able to perform the export inside of Power Automate. So, I mean, let's be honest, Paginated reports are largely Excel and PDF generators, not exclusively, but in a large part. So being able to call out to a Paginated report using Power Automate and export that, and then being able to do whatever you want with it. So whether that's a PDF or an Excel file or whatever, and being able to, let's say, take a snapshot weekly and drop that in a SharePoint library, right? Or put it in a OneDrive or email or whatever. So this one is, I think, a really kind of I would say obvious, but now available feature that I think is great. A lot of people, I think, are going to use this capability. So yeah, pretty slick. I'm happy to see this one. All right. Oh, this one has been a long time coming, right? The new look. Everyone's probably seen the little radio button up in the top of Power BI that's like allows the user to control whether they're in the new look experience or not. A couple things that we've made some changes to, and then some rollout plans we'll talk about in a second. So we've simplified the action bar a little bit, doing things like, this is the export menu and the share, and just kind of bring some refinement to that ahead of go live. Also allowing report authors to choose where the pages tabs are. So traditionally they've been across the bottom, a la Excel, right? Excel workbook tabs, but we're now allowing you to put them at the along the side of the report as well as on the bottom. In addition to allowing more control over the collapsing of the navigation for just removing a lot of the Chrome and the noise to just focus on your analytics. So, all right, so what about the rollout? What is happening here? So basically the changes I just mentioned, those will be coming in the next week. So at the end of September, what we're going to do is we're going to add a tenant setting that lets the that basically takes it so that the users are forced into the new look, right? Ahead of the forced rollout, which is the end of October. So this basically gives you a month to say, okay, we're going to take our users and move them into the new look. Now at the end of October, the new look is the new look, right? It's no longer the new look that's coming. It's the new look. That radio button will go away, and the new look becomes the new look at the end of October.
So you get a transition window.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So that here's the radio button that we're referring you to. So you've seen this for a while now. Eventually this is going to go away, and the new look will be there. So that'll be a nice. This has been a long time coming. I'm trying to remember how long this has been in the works. It's been, gosh, the better part of a year. I would assume. So looking forward to that. All right. So this isn't necessarily. I'm moving over to Power Automate. This isn't necessarily a new feature or a new announcement or anything like that, but I thought it was worth calling out because these are some very just kind of plain English best practices around using production flows. And I think if you follow some of these things, you're gonna your lifecycle management of your flows as you're operationalizing are going to be your life is just going to be that much better. So use a production environment, add redundant owners, use solutions, market as prod, some very kind of low barrier to entry types of things to use. So if you are just kind of, if you're not at a maturity level where you've really operationalized flows in your organization, this is a really, really good place to start, and not necessarily even very aspirational. I think some of these things are pretty low barrier to entry. I think some of it, like using solutions, maybe that's there's some things there that folks need to get up to speed on if they're not already using solutions, which I'm going to talk some more about here in a second. But this is really good. We've undergone, and Doug, I'm sure you've seen this inside of just Microsoft, a great kind of transformation on how this works. So, for example, if you create a new flow inside of Microsoft and you don't necessarily do it in the quote unquote right designated environment, you're going to get an email within a day saying, "Hey, congrats on your new flow." Okay. Based on the connectors you have, you may not have it in the right environment, and if you don't address, your flow is going to get deleted in endings. And I've actually had this happen.
I had a reference to, I had tested something over in one of the MTC lab environments, and I exported it and brought it over, and I had references. They were disabled actions, right, to this other environment, and it was like, hey, you're referencing connections to an environment that's not here. You can't do that. So we have disabled your flow as a courtesy.
As a courtesy.
But it was just, we know you didn't, and the truth was they were dead actions, but had I tried or accidentally created something that breached, stage to dev to prod, something like that, it caught that level of nuance. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's nice. That's great.
I mean, I wasn't, I didn't actually have any live actions, but that's the kind of thing, when you're moving between environments or you're testing or you're grabbing a third-party solution, you're maybe not paying attention to that level of inspection, I think is a good security and operational best practice. So I was super happy.
Absolutely. Yep. So good to see that. All right.
By the way, I've made about half those mistakes, so I'd like to endorse that document.
Yeah. Well, this is good stuff. And then, of course, we have all the kind of the toolkit out there for really once you kind of get to the maturity level to operationalize. So we've really got some great, reports, features, exports, information to operationalize this stuff. So kind of speaking of environments, this is a big one. We've introduced this concept of, in public preview, of connection references. And what this enables is, so first, you should be using solutions. You have to be using solutions to leverage this capability. So that's number one. So that's a good practice to kind of just get into out of the gate. Use solutions. If you're going to be doing any kind of ALM with your flows in Power Automate, use solutions. But that's going to allow you to start to use this public preview feature of connection references, which is basically showing that previously when you exported a flow from one environment to another, your connections were basically severed. They're basically orphaned, and you had to reconnect them back up to something in.
Very annoying. And some of the actions would actually clear themselves. So you would have to go copy and paste and correct things.
Yes, it was frankly, I mean, not a good experience, right?
Right.
So these connection references are now allowing you to say, okay, instead of tightly coupling to an exact connection, I'm going to connect to a connection reference, which then I can have different instances of that reference in each environment.
You know, I have that corporate communication solution we've shown a couple of times. I'm getting ready for the next version to go out to GitHub, and this is going to be invaluable for those who want to import it.
Yeah, so
I'm just going to leave it at that, right? Like,
well,
it's
and actually,
really
I thought this was a good call out here. Here's one of the side benefits of using connection references. This third bullet here is it allows you to be more descriptive and declarative with what these connections are, right? So you might have this account called SV account 1 at Contosos. Like, what is that? What's that for? What's the purpose? Well, it's a service account, right? So you can actually name these service connections that might be pointing to something different in each environment, but actually give you something declarative so they're more discoverable, right? So that's actually
that's really good. That's good work across the board right there.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. And yeah, so again, moral of the story, solution aware. If you're not using solutions, really kind of time to hop on the train there. And then using connection references, that's probably a good habit to start getting into now that these are here, because that really reinforces and helps with the lifecycle management stuff. This is one of these things where you come along, if you're getting into flow now, you're really not going to appreciate the pain that this fixed, but it's good. We're maturing the platform.
It's worth taking the pain of migrating your legacy solutions in your legacy projects into the solution framework.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Couple just I'm just going to scroll through this. I looked through this, 16 new connectors released in August. I'm not familiar with any of these. I'm just going to kind of do a quick scroll. Doug, if you know any of these and you're like, oh my gosh, the meeting room map, I mean, that's my jam. I mean, I don't know any of these.
Sometimes I do that, but today nothing has
has
really hit my historical
database. Scaffolder.
Look, I think it would be fair to say at this point that we're really going to continue to see expansion, and we're going after a little more obscure products as opposed to the mainstream, which to me is a huge sign of maturity.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was a band, the Zanran Scaffolder, like Fog Rock from the 80s. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. But anyway, all right, UI flows updates. So these are some good ones. And one I haven't messed with, but I really want to after reading this. So first, cancel UI flows that are in progress. Right, this is just a nice kind of have if something gets stuck, because some of these can take a long time. So if you need to cancel it, you now have that option. This one is the one I was just referring to. This is very cool. So using image recognition to define your click paths, right? So taking a screenshot of a screen and editing the location of your buttons or whatnot, and just using the image to define where you should be clicking.
Which is super useful if the app doesn't consistently position, or the control doesn't have a Win GUID handle for you to go addressable against, right?
Yep.
If you've ever done WinGDI development, which I actually have, not many people still play around with that level of window introspection, right? Where you had to go grab like a window ID and a sub control ID and addressable things. Not everything. Some things just generate a top line macro level window ID, so you can't go find the elements, and the UI may dynamically change based on what's on screen and the content, and so you can't use like pixel placement either.
Right.
And so this is one of those. It's super important to understand that
so hopefully this isn't you aren't using this all the time, because that means there's something wonky with your source application. But when you have to use it, I mean, this is a lifesaver. This is your kind of get out of jail free card to actually get what you need to get done.
Yes.
So this is awesome. We've implemented, some SAP GUI scripting capabilities to have native integration into SAP. So with everything at SAP, there's very specific versions and clients that you need to have. So make sure and check those out. But this is very awesome. Obviously, SAP, the more integration there we have, the better. Super pervasive throughout enterprise. Do until another great conditional based action. So in addition to like while loops and whatnot, is here. So use that. That's great. So all right. And one last thing here, just to kind of call out. You already mentioned this. Next week is Ignite. So we're expecting a lot out of next week. It's going to be a crazy week. A lot of, again, get ready to read that book of news that comes out every year for every conference. I feel like I barely just dug out from under the Build conference from several months ago, and here we are again in September at Ignite. So time to get back on the train here.
I was on a meeting with the collab MVPs, like the public ones, getting the internal briefing just on the high level items being covered, and obviously none of us can talk about that yet. So don't expect me to breach anything because I like being able to attend the calls. Yeah. But they give you a little rundown so you can sort of start thinking about the impact of it, so you're not cold, and they don't show everything, but it's just a lot, and so it's going to be a busy week next week. I would imagine we're going to be a little longer than 30 minutes next week, just so y'all gear up.
Yep. Cool. And so Doug, that's all I've got. Do we want to switch over to you?
Yeah, I'm gonna start the sharing of
you share and I'll switch you over.
Yeah, hang on for 1 second here. So hopefully, one moment. So yeah, it's trying. I'm just getting my my windows and stuff out, and so you're gonna produce for me. Is that what's gonna happen?
Sure thing, man.
So I appreciate that. All right, so you should see a little browser action for me going on over there, and then if you want to put me on video instead of you.
Yeah, my client is acting wonky. Let's do that, and then here.
Right. Well, I'm sure we'll figure it out. I almost had this going through. I downloaded OBS, put the plugins in, almost had this live on Open Broadcaster within like 30 minutes because we were still having issues with the production studios. They were doing, this time it was actually a network maintenance event, so I just wasn't on the right list to see that was happening. So they were like, "Yeah, Doug, this one was announced," and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that was my bad." So anyway, live from Todd's and Doug's house, right? We're doing a little Teams broadcast today on top of it. I had a couple of things. First, the SharePoint team did produce an entire guide as to everything that's like, not what's their cool keynote type announcements, but every other thing as to every session by topic around like Cortex. So they basically have a shopper's list for recommended or available viewing for everything that's going on within all of the stuff, including diving in specifics on Project Cortex and everything else. So the link for that will be out there. But I would recommend if you just go out to the SharePoint blog site, they have this amazing curated list of everything else that is out there. So that is going to be my focus next week, is going to be the announcements of the real deal around Cortex. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, there's also the virtual adoption hub. Have you seen this at all, Todd, or no? Have you?
No, I'm not familiar with this.
So it is like, deep dive technical training for IT pros, developers, and community champions. So you should go check out the adoption.microsoft.com/the virtual-hub site. Obviously, they also have the content will be over there from, and they do the curated resources from Learn, from the MVPs, from partners. So it's one of those sort of, it's like, I'm glad you watch us, but this is a really great resource, right? So you should, if we want to dive in deeper on things, the Adoption Hub is a great resource for doing on top of that. So there's not a lot to talk about on the collab side as far as what's going on over on that side as well. There was, however, a really interesting announcement, and this is really the only big news that I have this week that have happened since we've been offline, and that is that we announced a new discount and entitlements in the meeting experiences. And I really want people to pay attention to this one. This is for our enterprise customers. And I honestly don't know about coverage for Gov because I was trying to find it and I didn't see it at the bottom. But essentially, the biggest change that's happened is that you can now, enterprise agreement customers, so go hit the little asterisk and read that, starting October 1st, can get audio conferencing for free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw your head come up. So that's the dial-in audio conference. It says, hey, look, as we've shared, people are like doing all sorts of crazy stuff. For participants who don't have reliable internet, they can use audio conferences to join via dial-in numbers. It says, hey, people need to increasingly host large-scale meetings. So the first entitlement is it's just an entitlement grant, right? Now it's available for EA starting, and available for customers purchasing via partners in the web, right? So please go check out what that means, whether you're in that bucket, which most EA customers would be in the enterprise segment. And so check out the entitlement there. There's also a 35% off the advanced comms stuff. So it's a massive discount, I think really representing, in my personal opinion, so I'm taking Microsoft employee hat off,
right,
just the fact that there's been such explosive growth. There's whole new categories of people going after this thing, right? And using it in new and unique ways that were just frankly outside of what people were willing to even consider using it before.
right.
So the volume has changed. Can we all understand that? The volume of remote collaboration has changed, and we need to be able to adapt with that and allow some flexibility for our customers. And so I believe point 2 is reflective of those market conditions and our awareness of the challenges of our customers. So which is kind of implicit in the statements up above. So I'm super happy with that. Also, if you are migrating away from Skype for Business, there's the fast track entitlements. But the biggest thing for me was, if you did not previously have the entitlement for the audio conferencing, go check out that entitlement grant, which activates in what, 2 weeks? So
very cool. Yeah.
It's almost October, which I know is absolutely crazy for all of us on top of it. So I really wanted to then, that was everything else that I would really want to talk about, candidly, is on hold until next week, or is going to potentially be changed by something that's happening next week. So I'm going to kind of call the ball there and say, go check out your entitlement on top of that. There was some interesting stuff, if you're in the mood for more academic stuff, over on the Microsoft Secure blog. There's some neat stuff about nation state defense and identity defense of political figures and that kind of stuff. So if you're in the mood for some more academic reading, go check out the Microsoft Secure blog. I really enjoyed the content, but it's not highly relevant to our audience. But if you're just looking for some security geek out, but next week is gonna be nuts. Yeah. So I think that what I'm going to try and do is find from across the entire state, like the top 5 hidden gems. I'm going to try and walk away from the big things. Like I'll probably, yes, we'll talk about if there's anything earth-shattering changes in Cortex, but we've been talking about Cortex the whole time. We assume you'll attend some sessions if you're watching this show, right? So I'm going to try and find the things that maybe are a little more off the wall, unless one of the mainstream has changed so much that it warrants a tremendous adventure on top of it. But hopefully, if like I said, Cortex can be a big showcase next week. You can see it from the SharePoint guys' content stuff on top of it. So as you look down, you're like, there's just this entire whole giant section of things about what we've been doing with it, understanding an understanding model in Cortex, right? How to build document understanding models, metadata and taxonomy. So if you haven't been thinking about taxonomy, managed metadata service, and the rest of it, like we've been nagging you to, you're going to get a little jolt next week. So put your information architecture hats back on top of it. I also do like, this is something Corey Buzzle and I have been super big champions of, the content around communications and employee engagement. So I think you're really going to appreciate the thoughtful work that's going into how to make relevant, Corey runs that corporate communications workshop, right? Where he really focuses on how do you do these things? How do you get telemetry from it? How do you, leverage these different things and bring it together? There's a lot of this kind of content that's wrapped up in the work he does around that kind of content. And obviously, there's some IT pro administration stuff. I still have people who go like, we had a customer in maybe virtually speaking a month ago who was like, we just, we don't understand like how to monitor OneDrive. Well, remember the announcement we did around the OneDrive sync management portal and stuff. So even if you are experienced, if you haven't been keeping up, it's worth going into a few of these different sessions, just skim them in order to get yourself back to gold standard. So I'll try and find a few of those. And see if we can't be ready for next week. But again, the majority I wanted to point out is like tune into a few of these things next week. Pay attention to the Cortex stuff. We'll go hunting for hidden gems. check out your entitlement from teams and capabilities, and that was all I had for this week.
All right. Well, I think that's okay. I'm kind of getting anxious for next week because I know it's always a whirlwind of Ignite. I think has become just this. Oh, it's gonna be great, but it's gonna be a lot of catching up and reading, and so hopefully we can help out with that. And
let's be honest, virtual build was very impressive. So the Ignite team has a huge bar to live up to, in my opinion, right? Yeah. Because virtual build was, I had high expectations, and it was over them. And I've been to a few other conferences in between where I'm like, oh, I went to this conference from Build and it was so great, and I've had a few other ones that did not meet my expectations, right?
Well, I mean, so far for me, since March timeframe, Build has set the bar and it has not been exceeded from anything that I have seen, Microsoft or otherwise.
Agreed. All right, well, we're just rambling now. We'll give people back 4 minutes of their lives. We'll be ready next week. I'll have my pro layout stuff back next week. Promise. So we'll have cool multi-screens and all sorts of fun graphics and overlays, courtesy of our friends at Social Live.
Well, I'll get this recording uploaded to our YouTube channel for our subscribers there. So
yes. So thanks for tuning in, those of you who clicked through the teams, and get ready for some Ignite next week. And feel free to tweet at Todd and I next week if you are so inclined to have us tackle something for you. If you want something addressed or demystified, hit us up, and we'll see what we can do.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. You be good. Right. Take care. Hope the weather is good wherever you are.
Yep. All right. Cheers, everybody. Take care. Have a safe weekend.
Bye.